Hey Jim, how you doing?
I'm great, man. I'm curious what we're doing. You mentioned something about Spidey. I'm a huge Spider-Man fanatic. Got the Steve Ditko shirt on today. Got some of my old Spidey comics. Maybe that's what we're talking about.
Well, sort of. I think that what we are gonna do, what I chose was actually Madam Web.
Oh, I see. Tastes like failure.
Yeah, I understand. Uh, it is what it is. Jamie, hit it.
Trash Movie Bonanza with your hosts, Jim and Chris.
Hello, folks. Welcome to another incredible episode of Trash Movie Bonanza, a show where two buddies take a look at some schlock or cult hits or underperforming weird movies. My name is Chris. I host a show called Comic Tropes, and you are here on Comic Tropes After Dark, and I am always joined by my co-host.
Co-host with the most on the dark side of things, Jimmy Jams. And Chris, let me just say right away, right off the bat, I grew up in a Coca-Cola household, okay? Not Pepsi, Chris.
Most people did, Jim. If
Coca-Cola.
you look at the numbers. If you look at the numbers.
Okay. I just want to put that out for everybody watching.
But I think a lot of us did grow up in an area where there was a local Pepsi fireworks factory.
Definitely.
That's definitely a real thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Dude, so I guess we can just jump all over the place. But when mentioning the Pepsi Cola sign at the end, I don't know if I'm reading into this, but I swear to God, the S of that Pepsi Cola is that exact S from the old school Amazing Spider-Man comics.
And early in the movie, Madam Web, we'll sort of get into this movie in a sec, folks, and break it down. But Madam Web has a vision, and there's like a really big S, like just sort of like floating in space. And it does sort of feel like they're like, oh, well, S for Spider-Man, right? No, S for Pepsi. S for Pepsi. Great product placement in this movie. Very entertaining. There are at least two scenes in this movie where somebody hands Cassandra Webb, Cassie, the main character, a Pepsi product, and she just sort of like lightly fiddles with the cap instead of like drinking it, but like has it cheated, like the logo cheated, like right to the camera, and is completely. Just, you know, oh, I haven't seen something that egregious for product placement in a little while.
It's just there. There's a lot of stuff in this movie that's just there. That's just happening.
I wanted you to watch this because I go see most comic book movies in the theater just so that I'm up to date. I'm like, okay, Joker 2 doesn't seem like my kind of movie, but I'm going to see it just so that I can see it. Madam Web doesn't seem like it's getting good reviews, but I'm going to see it. And when I saw this, I was like, okay, well, that was quite a bad movie. But the more I thought about it, I was like, it's still a pretty entertaining bad because it's ridiculous. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yes.
It's not a boring bad.
Right. Although it is too long. Like I was shocked when I turned it on and I saw that it was a 2-hour running time. I was like, 2 hours for this? Oh no.
And when you watch it, it's very obvious that this movie not only had reshoots, but has some of the more obvious ADR, additional dialogue recording. And even when you're not the kind of like film buff that notices things like that, there's enough here that eventually you're going to twig to it because especially the villain, almost every scene, you know, something's like across his mouth or he's like turned away and going like, what I want you to do is find those girls.
As long as it has the ability to find those women now before they get their powers.
Little things like that. And you're at a certain point, you're like, what's going on here?
So many scenes where the camera is behind him, like following him into a room, and there's all this ADR. Just he's in the vocal booth, and they're like, I guess just say this line or try this or.
Right. And I think we'll hold off on like what I'm pretty sure was really the original idea for this movie, and we can just sort of like break it down and give our thoughts as comic book nerds.
Sure.
It's so weird. Sony has created some bangers with their Spider-Man license because, for instance, the Spider-Verse animated movies, I think everybody would agree, pretty fantastic.
Killer
Maybe you're
product.
biased.
I'm biased because I got to work on the first movie, but I
It's
think
great.
that it's visionary work, and
I love it.
So gorgeous, great writing, great voice work. I mean, just the whole package is so fantastic. And I've only seen I've seen all the Tom Holland Spidey movies, and because I am a legit Spider-Man fan. I have not seen any of the other. Like, I haven't seen any of the Venom movies or Morbius.
Okay.
So watching this movie, man, I just turned it on really without knowing anything.
Good.
And
Good.
it's
not
obviously
connected to anything.
It's its own universe.
Yeah.
It's its own
thing.
Yeah.
So you're not missing out. Just in case you were like, I wonder if like something here was set up in like, Venom 2. No, this is its own thing.
Okay. Yeah.
And what I love is this movie starts off as though it's going to be classy, Jim. We get the Columbia Pictures logos over the years, and they're like 100 years of history. You get that classic Marvel logo that has like, but then it like does that weird thing at the last minute where it pulls out and it's like in association with, and you're like, oh.
Not a real Marvel production, gang. Not a real...
Interesting character to decide to make a movie around, right?
This is what I want to... The behind the scenes stuff is almost more interesting to me, where it's like, how did they choose this? Because in the comics, Madam Web is an elderly woman who is like hooked up to a machine. She's blind. She's this all-seeing kind of oracle type character.
Yeah.
Like, how did producers look at that and go, that's a new hip character that we can turn into a movie?
I would have thought out of like Spider-Man, go with maybe either one of his sort of anti-hero characters or something like, Silver Sable, right? Silver Sable, fine. She's a Spider-Man character. Black Cat. All right.
Black Cat, I was going to say.
Yeah. There are characters that do their own thing. But Madam Web was always just this elderly psychic lady that was like, hey, like the same thing. Like, I've got a power, so that gives me a responsibility. Spider-Man, I'm going to give you the benefit of my visions. You can be sort of like the guy that goes out and fulfills those missions.
Right.
Very sort of odd 70s era of the comics where she was sort of almost like a Spider-Man's boss.
It's a very 70s idea, which I like. And when you see the artwork from the comics of that era, it's very 70s-esque. And I think she helped him out during that. There was like a big Juggernaut storyline.
That was a good single issue. Yeah. Like where Juggernaut is rampaging through New York.
Yeah.
And Spider-Man has to go up against him. Spider-Man is way outclassed. It's cool. That's a good issue.
Okay. Yeah.
Very strange idea though, to all of a sudden just go like, well, what if she was young and didn't really know how to use her powers, but was good at stealing cars?
And the character turns into a glorified babysitter, essentially.
Oh, yeah.
She's like a chaperone for these 3 teenage girls for the whole movie. And
the decision for the villain in the comics, he's a good guy.
Yeah.
But let me... Can I break some of this down for the audience? Can we do it?
Let's break it down.
All right. We start off, and they've made the decision to make this a bit of a period piece. We go all the way back to 1973 Peru, where I'll just call her Mommy Webb, Cassie's mom. Mommy Webb is a scientist, super pregnant, and she specifically says she's looking for like a rare spider that has peptides that could help people that have illnesses.
dead specimens show that the peptides in the spider's venom, they supercharge their cellular structure.
Of course.
I don't know what peptides are.
Yeah, isn't a peptide a thing that holds together like molecules or something? Or
Sure.
it is
You
now
can be the
because I
smart one
said
this
it.
episode.
It is now. Hey. I put on my scientist lab coat. I'm like, Chris, actually, peptides. And,
That's what the show needs is another character. We've got your like sinister minister character. Now you can like have like, I'm scientist man. A peptide is, according to Wikipedia.
Jamie, can you turn my background into a science lab?
Yeah,
I'm
we'll just give Jamie way too much work. Like, turn it into a full science lab. Give depth. Yeah. So whatever. We eventually learn that it's so unimportant. Who would go into like the remote Amazon rainforest that pregnant? Well, it turns out she knows that her baby has a genetic disease. So if she found this, she could cure the baby. Okay, fine.
Right.
Instantly, an obvious bad guy steps up behind her. And we're told that that's Ezekiel Sims. Were you reading the comics at all in the JMS John Romita Jr. era?
I was, because I loved JR's work at that time. The storytelling was perfect. He was sort of at his peak.
I think it was great art.
Straczynski's stories were weird and odd, and he got into this whole like spider mythology with Ezekiel. So again, man, not knowing anything about the movie, as soon as they introduced it, I was like, this is based on the comic book Ezekiel, the dude with the white hair who helps Peter Parker out? Oh, okay. I guess. All right.
Totally different than
but completely different
I don't
character.
think I think the only thing you could say is like, okay, he has spider powers, which Ezekiel in the comics has. And he's like, hey, there have been other people with spider powers. I'm going to mentor you and teach you all this supernatural stuff. That's the comics, though. In this movie, tell you what do you think his motivation was for anything? What does Ezekiel want and why?
Very good question. He wants spider powers. He wants to.
Sure, but he actually gets those almost right away.
Right. He knows.
And then we've got like almost 2 hours.
Yeah.
I've never seen a villain so ill-defined.
Yeah. Well, let me say this. He explains in the very beginning to Mama Webb, he knows about the mythology of the actual spider people that live in the trees, which as soon as he started talking about that, I was like, what?
Spider people that live in the trees? What?
That spider can give superhuman strength and power like Las Arañas.
Las Arañas? The mythical spider people who run across the treetops and punish evil men with their black poison touch.
And then when we actually see those spider people in the first 5 minutes of the movie, I was like, oh shit, I'm on board. What is happening? There's spider people crawling down from tree. This is going to be wild. And then the movie gets kind of boring for a while. But Chris, my point is, since he knows about the spider people and he knows about this rare spider, is that his only motivation for literally murdering people in cold blood, shooting a pregnant woman and walking out with this little magic spider in a case and being like, no one's going to follow me or investigate me or
apparently
accuse me of murder and I'll safely
that's a
get
great
back
point.
to America?
Jim, I didn't even think about that, but that's true. Like, Mommy Webb dies, and so does like a few scientists and workers, like the people that were with her on this scientific expedition. Yeah, you'd think there would have been an investigation into the only other guy working there that like survived. Who knows? Who knows? He gets the spider. We don't see him like, use it, but the next time we see him like 20, 30 years later or whatever, he now has Spider-Man powers and he's rich. We'll get into his story in a second. I just want to also mention the funny thing to me is right before Mommy Webb instantly finds the spider, which is like, never been found or whatever. He's like snooping around and he's got like, a little spy camera. And the funniest thing to me is he goes into this tent and like goes through her book. And instead of notes, there's like a cool drawing of a spider. And he took a picture of that.
Yes. Yeah. I noticed that. I'm like, that's just a drawing. That doesn't help you.
This
like
will help.
Yeah.
Maybe he's just a pervert, like into spiders. Maybe that's what he's into.
Spider fetish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, this will help me later in my private time.
Oh my God.
I'm going to let the spider bite me and I'll look at these pictures of spiders.
I love that he had the little portable James Bond spy camera though for the 70s. Like that's advanced technology for 73.
And he mentions that he came from nothing. He's like, I'm poor and I need this. And you're like, okay, so you want money or power or something, but to what end? Or like, what? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the whole sort of preamble that we have to like deal with. And by the way, another funny thing is you mentioned the spider people. That kind of takes away from like the specialness of Spider-Man that everybody already dresses like Spider-Man.
Right. Right.
But I guess that's a coincidence too, because it's not like in the movies, Spider-Man was like, you know what? Those spider people that live in the trees in Peru are pretty cool.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll base my costume on them.
I'm going to base my whole vibe off of them. And I just so happen to be bitten by a radioactive spider. It's not the same species as just this magic spider that exists in the Amazon that you can just also get powers from.
Yeah, but we do know that radiation moves peptides into you.
That's true. It always goes back to peptides.
So weird. It's also a little funny that the spider is always like this digital thing. I was like, you couldn't get a real spider? Couldn't get a real spider? Really?
Yeah, there was no attempt, man. It's just like, just animate that. Just animate that. We're not hiring an animal wrangler. We're not, because, that's an actual job, like an insect wrangler on a set of a movie. And they're like, we're not doing any of that. Just that's digital,
I almost understand if you want to make it like extra special, but it's pretty much just a spider that's sort of like pink or reddish or something.
Yeah.
And I feel like, well, if you're going to go digital, and that's an important sort of plot point, is this spider, maybe animate it better.
Right.
Because not all the special effects in this are bad. When there are the few action scenes, they're totally competent. You know what I mean? Like there's nothing where I go like, that looked fake. But the spider doesn't look good. Oh, we should mention, okay, so Ezekiel shoots Mommy Webb to get that spider, but the spider people sort of like take her to this cave and are just like, they have the spider, like a different spider, I guess, but the same breed, bite her so that her baby emerges healthy.
Yes.
From there, question mark exactly what happens, but we jump forward to now adult Cassie Webb, who's grown up an orphan, and she's an EMT in what era? 2003 New York.
2003.
2003. So, and that's where everything else is set, folks. So this is technically like, over 20 years ago.
Yeah. Dude, one of the behind the scenes things I watched, which they were all very entertaining, was from the red carpet. One of the producers of the movie was like, the reason why we chose 2003 is we really wanted to fit in the Britney Spears song Toxic. And the person interviewing him was like, oh. And then that was a real thing that one of the producers said. It was
that was what was important.
Oh shit. Okay. They were like, we just thought it'd be great to have that song in the movie. It's like, wow.
Well, I thought that the reason was because Cassie's partner is Ben Parker, the guy that will one day be Uncle Ben to Peter Parker, Spider-Man. Which isn't like necessary, but I guess ties it into Spider-Man.
Right.
It's really hard to you know what? We shouldn't even try to guess the reasons for some of these things. It's in 2003. Go with it.
And then the girl who looks a lot like Sarah Michelle Gellar, who's pregnant, she's obviously the mom.
Emma Roberts.
Emma Roberts. She's the mom of Peter Parker.
Mary Parker. She's Mary Parker, married to Richard Parker, Ben's brother, who we're just told is off in some
Richard's
exotic
in another country. Yeah.
In the comics, they were spies for S.H.I.E.L.D. So maybe that was like saying like he could be.
That's right.
I think I think Sony was overly ambitious here and may have literally thought that they, by putting it back there and saying like, you know, this is before Spider-Man has grown up, that maybe they could somehow one day integrate into the MCU. They'd like have this little like carve out. And I'm sure Marvel was like, oh, no thanks.
Right.
That's okay.
Right. We're good. We have our thing going already.
Do your thing. You've got the rights. We get it. No, we don't need Madam Web. We're okay.
Yeah.
We've got the Eternals. Who needs Madam Web?
I still haven't seen that either.
It's pretty. Visually, it's good. Yeah, Chloe Zhao. She's good. I'm such a nerd. I'm a sucker for.
Well, no, man. The thing for me is like you sort of have to watch all these movies. I feel like because it's part of your job.
I think
during Weekly Spinner Rack to be in tune with what's happening pop culture wise with comics and all the media.
Yeah.
For me, a lot of this stuff, like I feel like I can catch it some other time, or it's just not on my immediate radar, but there's certain things like Spidey or Batman. Like I'll watch all the stuff because I think it's great. The new Penguin show was incredible. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, I agree.
So it's just, you know, we all pick and choose what media we want to digest these days. And it's fine if you miss things, but it like I probably would have never seen this movie if you hadn't recommended it. But I'm glad I saw it because now I have this weird frame of reference of like, this is a bizarre, almost experimental, like Frankenstein thing that they put together.
Yeah. You want to know something crazy? Tell you what, later in this episode, after we've gotten a few plot elements out for the audience so that we're all on the same page, I'll tell you, it does actually adapt a specific storyline in large part from the comics. I think a lot of people miss that, but it actually does adapt a Spider-Man story. Okay, so yeah, Cassie and Ben Parker are EMT partners. They're driving around the city. What did you think of who's this actress? Dakota Johnson. Any big opinions on how she played this character or her as an actress? Have you seen her in other things?
I haven't. I know she's in the 50 Shades of Grey movies.
I guess so. I didn't see those.
I haven't seen those, but dude, I felt like she seemed so aloof and disinterested in being in the movie. And I know her, but as our main protagonist, she's like fairly unlikable. And I guess the explanation is she is upset in life in general because she feels like her mother didn't care about her. Her mother died during childbirth. And she just kind of feels like the world is against her, but it's also like, guys, it's a superhero movie. Like we're supposed to fall in love with the protagonist. Like we're supposed to really be on their side. Like Peter Parker is such a likable protagonist. Like Clark Kent is a likable protagonist. Like we want to be on their side. It's the hero.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that and I think a little of that is just sort of Dakota Johnson and what she brings. She seems like a little distant or aloof in a lot of the characters that she plays. I thought Cassie Webb was every once in a while a little funny because of that, but it does the awkwardness can be funny, but it's also a little. It could be such a small thing to make that awkwardness like more of a joke instead of just sort of off-putting. For instance, these guys get to the hospital right away and a little kid has drawn a picture to thank Cassie and she's just like, oh, no, thank you. And Ben's like, just take the picture. She's like, what would I do with it? I'm like, okay, a little funny, but the delivery is just somehow off.
Right.
It was really close to being funny. Maybe for some people it is funny. For me, I was like, eh.
Your little boy wanted to say thank you.
You know what? Mr. Ben Parker here did all the work, so...
Just take it.
What am I supposed to do with this?
Just put it in your pocket and then throw it away somewhere else.
She seems like a jerk.
I felt the same way because like most human beings know that like, dude, you just take the drawing. Just take the drawing. Like
Yeah.
you're not acting like a real human. Like this is odd.
Exactly. You have
It's
to be
taking me out of the
severely
movie.
autistic to not get that. And she's not. Plus, she has chosen a career path as an EMT, somebody that wants to help people, but you don't understand that would be helping someone to just accept
Right.
the drawing and say, thank you. It's my job, but thank you.
Right.
It's a little weird.
It's strange. And also, man, I have to say before I forget, I like Adam Scott a lot. I think
He is
he was
likable.
fantastic in
whatever he
Parks
does.
and Rec, playing off of Amy Poehler. Like they were great together. So I didn't know he was in this movie. So when he shows up at the very beginning, I was kind of like, oh shit, Adam Scott's in this. What is he going to do with this material? Like, cause he's almost like too smart for this, too good for this. So it's like, is he going to carry all of his scenes? And he was just sort of there.
He's just sort of there, unfortunately.
Yeah, everybody in this movie is just sort of there.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I agree. Nobody gets that much depth or any great super memorable scenes, and I think that's probably the problem. Before they shot, they should have had a rewrite where they had somebody do some punch up, and I guess not every movie with superheroes has to have lots of jokes, but I sort of feel like this one could have benefited from some more humor.
Well, also, man, anything related to Spidey, adjacent to Spidey.
Point.
Spidey's rooted in humor, man.
He is. How long did it take you to realize that he was Ben Parker as in Uncle Ben? Like, do you remember when you it was like, oh, okay, I get who that is now?
Did they as soon as they said his name,
you were just like, okay, he's Ben Parker.
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. And then when they're eating Chinese food in the break room and he mentions he's met a new girl that he's into, but he can't say her name is May. He doesn't say her name.
I know.
I'm assuming, I was like, oh, that's supposed to be Aunt May that he's in love with. And they can't say May for like legal reasons.
I met someone.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
What's this one's name? Oh. Serious.
But that doesn't make sense. Like, why couldn't they? Of course they could say that.
But they could.
To be able to. That was so weird. Because you're like, Ben Parker, he's met someone, he's telling Cassie it's serious. You're like, well, timeline-wise, that has to be Aunt May. And she's like, oh, this one must be special. Yeah, she's special. Doesn't say the name. There's another scene later where they're like, guess the baby's name, because Mary Parker has like a bridal, not a bridal shower. What's it called? I don't know.
A baby shower.
Baby shower.
Yeah,
and nobody says Peter in the whole movie.
Guess the name of Mary's baby. Okay, I'll kick things off. Sam.
Nope. Stephen. He's not named Stephen. Richard Jr. Richard wishes. Cassie, what's your guess? Ben?
I know.
And you're like, they cannot be blocked from saying the names like May. They're using Ben Parker and Mary Parker and Richard Parker. There's no, you know what?
That's a good point.
I just
thought, I thought maybe is there a specific loophole where Sony, but then Sony says obviously Peter in the other movies that
in the Spider-Verse movies, they can say Peter and May and stuff like that. So it doesn't make it just feels weird. This movie just has things that are weird because you're like, why are they not like it's so obvious that they're talking about May Parker or Peter Parker and they never say those names.
Right.
I was so confused by something like that. So what happens next? Oh, right. Cassie gets her powers.
Yes.
Through EMTs.
Water.
They're on a bridge. Cassie rescues somebody from the car, and then this is a little funny to me. She's stuck in the car and it falls into the river. Has visions of all the stuff that's going to happen in 20, 40, 50 minutes in the movie, quick. And then Ben Parker has revived her. So she's died and somehow that activated her powers, which are never super consistent, but basically they're sort of clairvoyant, mostly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Until the very end, when she gets additional powers that we've never seen before.
Yeah.
You ever see
the introduction, and a big critique I have is like the introduction and the display of her powers, I feel like is done in a very jarring, kind of unsettling way of you as the viewer being like, oh, whoa, there's all this glitchy editing. And it's like, okay, if this is going to be the main power of the protagonist of the movie, can you somehow do this in a more stylish, like easily digestible way for us, the viewer? Like, I feel like it's a very glitchy, disorientating thing. It's an odd, it's just an odd thing.
I'll defend it a little, Jim, in that, like, it's also obviously disorienting initially to Cassie. So I guess the director was trying to make us, the audience, feel what Cassie's feeling. I agree that it's kind of annoying. It is like very glitchy and like, you know, she's got like fragments of the vision and then it like repeats in real life in a slightly different angle.
Yeah.
I get it, but yeah, I think that that's what they were going for anyway, to try to make the viewer feel what the character's feeling. That's a guess.
Yes. That's a good point.
I'm giving the director, S.J. Clarkson, some credit there. This is her first movie. She's done a bunch of TV stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I feel like, you know, I don't know.
Is this her last movie, Chris?
I don't know who could like really turn it around, because clearly this is a movie where they didn't just have the script locked in and then they made it and that was that. You know, there were reshoots, there was ADR. It was a mess. It clearly is. Yeah. Although the first half of the movie is way more coherent, even though we're talking about ridiculous stuff, it's totally more coherent. And at a certain point here, we're going to go completely off the rails. I can't wait to talk about that.
Yes.
This is when we get to meet Ezekiel and I guess deal with the villain and the conflict of the movie. Ezekiel seduces a lady and like poisons her. And
sleeps with her
he doesn't poison her yet. He sleeps with her. He sleeps with her. And he has a nightmare.
She's impressed by his gorgeous 2003 penthouse.
He's rich. He's got a penthouse. It's New York. It's night. He's got his spider in like this little terrarium in the middle and stuff. It's great. That's a long-lived spider, by the way. I don't think spiders generally live over 20 years, but I don't know. Then again, you know what?
It's a magic spider.
Peptides
and phosphates and whatnot. And
so he has a dream that 3 spider girls from the comics are going to one day like throw him out a window. As I say it, I just realized how different, because it's not a big action scene. It's like
he's the comedian. He's the comedian from Watchmen. It's the same death as the comedian.
It is.
I just realized. And you see a little button, Chris, fly off his robe.
Oh, that would be great.
The smiley face button.
Oh, just have fun with it, folks. And the 3 Spider Girls, I would say, actually look cool. Maddie Franklin, Anya Corazon, and Jessica Carpenter. They've all been Spider-Man, Spider-Women, or Spider-Girl, or Aranye, or Arachne. They've all changed their names here and there. They're from the comics. Looks cool. I hope you liked it, because that and about another scene of like 2 or 3 seconds of them in costume is all we get of superhero stuff.
It's one of my major complaints, man, that when we get to the end of the movie, I have a whole scenario that I want to run past you that I think could have made the end even more over the top. But because we'll get there. We'll get there. I don't want to say it now. We'll get there.
Noted. I want to know. I want to know. Yeah. So he tells the lady, I have this nightmare every night that these 3 girls are going to kill me. And then he starts poisoning her by touching her And I want to come loop back to that in just a second. So he touches her and she's poisoned, and he's like, I need your code. Turns out she works for the NSA.
Mm-hmm.
She gives him the code. He still kills her. Okay. He's called Ezekiel Sims, but he's got a death touch, like where he poisons. That's not something Ezekiel ever had, by the way, folks. But you know who did? Spider-Man's clone, Kane.
Mm-hmm.
And Kane had a costume that was like sort of like all black with sort of webbing across it and like sort of specialized eyes. I think that like maybe the script never called him Kane, but I think that this character is largely based on Kane, not Ezekiel Sims. I don't know why they would have decided to call him Ezekiel Sims, other than if you call it Kane and introduce a whole sort of thing of like clones of Spider-Man, that it just doesn't fit. But I think this character is massively based on Kane. That's a power Kane had. And it makes more sense because Kane sort of vacillated between being evil and sort of anti-hero.
Right. I think Ezekiel probably just sounded cooler to them. Like, well, let's use the Ezekiel name.
Yeah.
And then we'll mesh the mythologies of these two characters together. But I think you're right about the Kane is more the dominant influence here.
I think so. That's just a guess. As a comic book nerd, I look at it and I go, that started out as Kane, and at some point they just decided, well, we're not going to call him Kane. But like the costume and the powers and the attitude, that's Kane. That's my opinion. So there's something for some comic book trivia. That's what we do here.
We love it. We love it. And dude, I guess this, I don't know if this is jumping ahead, but I love that Ezekiel has a full-time Oracle type girl who just sits at his computers 24/7 and she's like his, Alfred in a way, or
sort of. It's so ill-defined, Jim. It's so ill-defined. He just says, I'm paying you a ton of money. That's it. That's the explanation we get. Tell you what, it is jumping ahead plot-wise, but let's just finish with Ezekiel's thing since it's relevant, and then we'll jump back to a little more Cassie stuff. So there is a Cassie scene, and then we come back to Ezekiel, and the reason he got this NSA stuff is this is the most ridiculous. No, this is the second most ridiculous part of the movie, maybe third. It's way up there, folks. It's way up there. So the NSA supposedly has tracking software, okay? And so Ezekiel, understandably, wants to find these 3 girls that will one day kill him. And what they do is they can look at any camera feed and they'll identify a face, right? But keep in mind, what do we have to go on? A dream in the future. So like this tech girl pulls up these sort of like superhero faces, like costumed, masked girls 20 years in the future from his dream.
I don't understand.
I guess he just described them really well. It's like a police sketch. And then she's like, and then we'll de-age them 20 years.
Right.
So the mask disappears and they get like younger.
This is what they look like in your visions, as well as you can recollect.
Their faces have been taunting me for years.
Here's what they should look like now.
The Maddie Franklin and Jessica or Jennifer or whatever characters look like Sydney Sweeney and Celeste O'Connor. The Anya Corazon character, you got to watch it again, folks, just turns into like this generic face. It is like, it's just somehow not the actress.
I didn't even notice that.
It looks terrible.
Okay.
And then instantly they're like, and now we can find them.
It's preposterous.
Can you imagine, like, I don't know. I don't even know.
It's also, man, like, I guess it's sort of an interesting idea, but also in post 9/11 New York City, the amount of cameras that have to be around the city. And now Ezekiel has access to every one of these cameras. Yes. In a city the size of New York, how would this even be feasible of like tracking anything? It's like, I mean, it's a movie,
know.
whatever. It's terrible, but it's just,
But she has
it's
like
such
8 monitors, Jim. She has like 8 or 9 monitors.
Well, that's true.
So,
That's true.
you know,
But it's just such a lazy idea of like, what hack writers came up with like, hey, he's got access to every single camera,
every camera in the
entire
world.
city of, even if it's just Manhattan. It's like, dude, that's a lot. That you're not going to.
That's a good point too, because you're right. Like theoretically, it could be the whole world. They start by looking in Manhattan, and they do sort of end up finding all 3 girls right away. But let me jump back to the Cassie stuff real quick, because this is when we start getting the product placement.
Oh Lord, yeah.
Cassie goes to like a barbecue. Ben hands her a Pepsi, and she's just fiddling with it for like a full minute. In fact, Jamie, just put that whole minute in and speed it up.
There you go.
Oh, thanks.
It doesn't even crack it open.
No.
It's just
No, she doesn't. She just holds it, cheats it to the camera. This is sponsored by I wonder if this movie broke even because they took the Pepsi money.
I don't know. And
I
also
hope they did.
Mike Epps is working the barbecue grill, and Mike Epps is like a really good actor, hilarious dude, and
I'm glad he got paid.
Isn't used at all in this movie, and his funny thing is that he smashes the burger patties down, Chris, onto the grill too much, and that's why people.
And Cassie's like, you're that's the flavor. You're pushing the juices out of it.
Yeah,
she's kind of right. Whatever. They're there for like I say, a baby shower for Mary Parker, and Cassie's just super awkward. They're gonna have a guessing game for the baby's name. Nobody guesses Peter. And they're all instantly called off though to a job. They're like a fireworks factory. Keep this in mind, folks. It's a plot point.
Hey, the people are trapped. We need to treat them before we move them.
The place is packed with explosives, industrial-grade fireworks.
A fireworks factory is on fire. The EMTs show up, save some people. And then Mike Epps' character is sort of like their supervisor. He's O'Neill. And Cassie has a vision of him dying in a car accident.
Yeah. Doesn't
know how to act on it because she's confused. She's new to these powers. He drives off, and he gets T-boned and dies. It's kind of sad.
Yes. And dude, he gets in the ambulance and drives like 20 feet and immediately gets crushed by the big rig and is killed. And it's almost a comedy beat. It's almost like,
yeah, it is.
Maybe don't get in this ambulance. I'll be fine, baby. Gets in the ambulance and boom, splat. Like, oh.
So just keep in mind though that fireworks factory exists, because we are going to come back there. That is an important location. We get some of the Ezekiel stuff we talked about. We go back to Cassie at her apartment, and she starts to learn her powers because she sees a pigeon hit her apartment window and die. Jumps back in time to and is like, well, this won't make a difference, but she opens the window. The bird flies through. It doesn't die. She's seeing she could affect the future. She could save a life.
Right.
I would like it if she just all of a sudden realized that was her powers and goes like, I could save so many pigeons.
Pigeon girl.
That's the extent of her goals, her ambition in life. She's like, so many pigeons I could save.
Protector of the city's rats with wings.
Madam Wings.
Yeah.
Madam Wings.
Madam Wings.
With these powers.
Oh, Chris, quick little arty thing that they did in the movie that kind of surprised me. Right before Cassie's powers manifest each time, there's always this little moment of broken glass.
Yes.
The windshield of the car, the bird hitting the window, and the glass forms like a web pattern. So there's this like
Web of life.
metaphorical web
Yes.
thing to help us dumb viewers be like, oh, this is like web powers or something. Or, I don't know.
A splintering web, but a web that connects us all. Just like a
Yes.
broken window? Wait, no. Okay, I went too far with the metaphor.
I'm
Yeah.
giving this movie a lot of credit right now, but
who knows exactly how much time has passed, but it's time for the funeral for the Mike Epps character. And, you know, Ben's like, hey, you know, it's up in Poughkeepsie. You could get on a train right now and still make it. And she's like, okay, you know what? It's the right thing to do. So she goes to the train station, and the 3 girls that will one day kill Ezekiel. By the way, why did it have to be 3? Now that I'm thinking of it, it could have been 1.
Right.
And then you'd have more time to develop each character.
yeah.
It didn't need to be 3. Oh, well.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll tell you why. It's because it comes from a comic book. I just remembered. Okay.
Okay.
So, whatever. All 3 girls are basically getting on the same train. It's fate, if you will. And Cassie has a vision that Ezekiel shows up in his Spider-Man costume. He also has a Spider-Man costume.
Yes.
And that he's killing the girls. So she hustles them off.
Yeah. The train sequence almost turns into like a horror movie in a way. Like he's suddenly a slasher where he literally is just like stabbing and murdering the girls in cold blood in this brightly lit train. And it's like, oh, is Ezekiel Jason all of a sudden? Like what?
I know.
Okay.
But Jim, then also because Cassie like sort of hustles the girls out, and the girls are like, who the hell is this lady? We're being kidnapped. The police all sort of swarm, and Ezekiel starts killing them.
Yes.
And I was like, wow, you know, a horror Spider-Man is actually a pretty cool idea if they wanted to lean into that. And I was saying, like, do more humor. But what if you did this as like a real horror movie?
Yeah.
Spider-Man killing people? Like that could be scary and creepy.
They could have pushed that.
They could have.
And they obviously didn't.
They didn't push anything. We're saying like, oh, push this, push that, whatever.
Yeah.
It's more like, but that little scene, it's kind of cool. Like the idea of like just how powerful he is. He's crawling and he's clinging to walls and he's punching. Doesn't have webs. Nobody has webs.
Right.
So she forces the 3 girls off the train, and they all run upstairs out of the station, and she just steals a cab. There's the only friendly cab driver in New York who's helping somebody get the bags out of the trunk. That doesn't happen much, folks.
No.
Maybe
we were both
lift.
just in New York like 2 months ago, and it's like there's no cab driver that gets out of his car and politely helps like a little old lady onto the sidewalk and is like, "Have a great day, ma'am." You know, I think that doesn't happen.
But this was back in 2003, so you know maybe. It was a different time. You know, we were rebuilding.
Kinder, gentler New York in 2003.
Oh, yeah. 2 years after 9/11, everybody was in just great spirits. I would argue that Cassie's real power in this movie, Jim, is stealing cars and driving them decently well.
Yeah.
We'll talk about that as we go through this
She's
movie.
like a good klepto and a good, I guess she's a good driver because she has the EMT experience driving the ambulance.
Right. That's true. That's true. She drove that fast when we first saw her.
Oh shit, dude. And she winds up driving 2 different vehicles into Ezekiel in 2 different scenes of the movie. Where
You just got what I was going to talk about. Yes, she does.
Yeah, so I didn't mean to jump the gun. Sorry.
But that's what I'm saying when I say she's good at driving. In fact, like Jamie, we'll give you the time codes. As you can see, the only time like she does anything against Ezekiel, she drives a car literally into him.
Yes.
That's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
How much time would you say has passed, just ballpark, between Cassie seeming to kidnap these girls in front of the police and grabbing that taxi cab? How much time could it be? The most time. 15 minutes?
I was just going to say it should just be 15 minutes, right? 20 minutes?
At most, right? At most.
Yeah.
Because it's all like one continuous scene. Guess what's on the news? Lady kidnaps three girls.
Yes,
and
on
she's
the
like,
radio.
"That's not true."
It's also the same person police are seeking to question in the possible abduction of the 3 teenage girls.
What? But you guys, what about them? He was crawling on the ceiling. What about that guy? I mean, you saw,
No one saw ceiling guy. Everyone thinks you're the kidnapper.
So Cassie is now on the run. Cassie, or like they don't know that it's Cassie specifically, but they've got a description of Cassie and like kidnapping 3 girls.
Yes.
Within minutes. What?
3 teenage girls played by 25-year-old women, but they pass as teenagers. They pass. I love that they gave the black girl though the skateboard, because it's like teenagers love skateboarding and they love being rebellious. So this character has sneakers and a skateboard.
That's what she's into.
And bombshell Sydney Sweeney is dressed to look like Velma or something from Scooby-Doo. They're like, we really need to like desexualize her. So let's put her, she still has kind of like cool little thigh highs on, but it's like,
how unsexy can you make Sydney Sweeney? It's like, you can't.
Well, dude, I was going to say in
but she's supposed to be the nerd.
My extensive research on this movie, the footage of Sydney Sweeney on like the red carpet looking like this absolute sex bomb, super hot. I go for it, girl. You're incredible. But it's like, you see that contrasted with how she looks in the movie. And in real life, she doesn't give a shit because she's like, I know this movie sucks, but I'm going to be fine. My career is going to be fine.
I think that like there's an interview where she said they told her like, you'll be playing Spider-Woman in the like, Spider-Man universe. And I think that, or no, I think that they told Dakota Johnson something like that. So I think she thought she was going to be like in a more Spider-Man movie. They kind of tricked her, I think.
Yeah, I saw something about that too. And they were, because Dakota Johnson fired her agents.
That's right.
Right after the trailer. The first trailer dropped and everyone was like, oh, this is going to be a huge bomb. This is a piece of shit. And she was like, what did I sign up for? My agents, they all screwed all this up. Like, I thought this was MCU. I thought this, and it's like, no, honey, you're in like a C-level Sony movie that's not
even allowed to say Peter Parker for some reason.
They can't say Peter. Can't say Peter.
Sydney Sweeney, I remember, was on SNL as the host like a couple weeks later. And she's like, you've all seen me in Euphoria. You didn't see me in Madam Web. She like literally made a joke about how little that movie was sort of being seen. I was ouch. Like the actual stars are like started talking a little bit of shit about the movie.
Oh, completely. And getting away with it. That's kind of like,
what else are they going to do? What's Sony going to do? Go like, you can't talk like that. You're fired from Madam Web 2.
Right.
And I'll bet you something. I bet you that Sony just seems to be dead set on forcing this stuff down our throat. I heard that they were trying to put together a Sinister Six movie that would have all those famous villains. Vulture, okay. Morbius, Venom, and Madam Web.
Oh, what?
Yeah, and like someone else that's been Craven, because that movie's still coming out.
That Craven movie is still coming. Is that happening?
Yeah, I think like by the time this comes out, it will be like just about out, so people will know what we're talking about with Craven. Who knows? Who knows? Like I'd say the first Venom was kind of fun. So that was surprising. You said you didn't see it yet. I'd say it was kind of fun.
Yeah, I love Tom Hardy though. I mean, I wouldn't mind watching those some night. It's just, I don't hear enough good. You hear people raving about certain things, like we mentioned the Penguin Show, or even Matt Reeves' The Batman. I thought was a great movie.
So good.
There's a zeitgeist that kind of talks about things that are happening, and because I'm so distracted with other things, I tend to follow that stuff. Like with horror, we talked about The Substance. We mentioned it anyway.
Yeah.
But there's certain standout things, and when it comes to Madam Web or something like Craven, it's like, well, I don't know if that I'll be seeing those, but
I'll just say this. Dakota Johnson, I haven't seen in tons of stuff, but she was in the remake of Suspiria, and that's actually a really good movie. And you'd be like, well, the original Suspiria is kind of like, like more than a cult hit. It's really good. The remake is also very, very, very good.
Yes. That's on my list, man. I haven't, but everyone has recommended that movie to me.
Yeah,
and
I think you'd like it, Jim. It's quite strong.
Yeah, I heard it's incredible.
Strong. Yeah. Gotta get back to Madam Web. Sorry.
Back to babysitting teenagers in the woods.
Right. So she just drives to like the woods and is like, we got to figure this out. And this is where she's like, I can see the future, kind of.
Who are you? What is going on?
I can see the future. Kind of.
Almost a funny line, not quite.
Yeah.
And then she tells them, I need like 3 hours to investigate. You guys just sit here in the woods by yourselves so that you can't get killed by this guy. And I'm like, I guess that almost makes sense, but it's weird.
Yes.
It's a weird place to leave them.
Yeah. It's just awkward where she's just like, hey, complete strangers, young girls, you're going to have to just trust me while I just drive away from the woods now and do some sleuthing on my own, like do some Nancy Drew shit. And you're just going to trust me, and I'll be back in about 3 hours or so.
I'm going to be back in a few hours.
Where are you going?
I need to check some things out about all of this.
You can't just leave us here.
We'll be okay, Julia. We don't need a babysitter.
Oh, yeah, sure. Just 3 teenagers alone in the woods. Definitely not the opening of a horror film.
And she's like, don't do anything dumb.
I'll come back with hamburgers for you to eat.
Yeah. If you're good, you get a hamburger. This is when Cassie starts to make weirder and weirder decisions as the movie goes on. She gets back into the city in that stolen cab, pulls into an alley, and takes the plates off of the cab. I would argue, folks, in a city full of like thousands of yellow cabs, you are now making yourself more of a target by taking off license plates.
Yeah.
What do I know, though? I'm not a criminal like Cassie.
Yeah. No, you're right. I thought the same thing. I'm like, wouldn't that make you stand out more not having plates?
I don't really remember what the logic is here, but I know what it is. So Ezekiel attacked, and one of the girls in the woods goes like, he was crawling like a spider. And she's like, spider? I haven't heard that word, since I was like an infant.
He was using his hands.
Why are you like this?
I'm just saying it was more of a crawl.
It was like a spider person.
But didn't my mother like die looking into spiders? Like, it's so funny. Like the word spider, she's like, spider.
Yeah.
So she goes back to her apartment, pulls out a trunk of like her dead mother's photos and diaries and stuff. Somebody kindly collected all that research. Didn't bother to find the spider apparently, but like just like gave it to an orphan.
Just in one convenient trunk of mom's memories, mom Webb's memories, including a pristine photo of her and Ezekiel in 1973.
What? That's the guy.
It's perfect.
That's the guy that was trying to kill us. Because if you don't know, in her vision, he wasn't wearing the costume. And then in real life, he puts on the costume.
Yes.
Whatever. So she, I guess got a good look at him in that vision.
Sure.
The girls are bored and they decide that they saw a diner nearby that they're going to go to. That is actually a comic book reference, folks. That was the 4-star diner. And in the 60s, that was the diner that Peter Parker and Flash Thompson and Gwen Stacy and Harry Osborn would always hang out at.
I didn't catch that reference. That's badass.
Didn't you?
Okay.
That was there for us comic fans. Go, oh, cool! The 4-star diner.
I mean, I appreciate it. It's super inside, but it's like at least inside. Chris, that means there was one comic book dork on the writing staff that was like, can it be the 4-star diner?
If we're going to put it in a diner, just so you know, there was a regular hangout.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is great. The girls are at the diner and like do silly stuff like get up on a table with some local high school jocks and dance on it. It's not really dancing so much as moving a little and not breaking the table, which is impressive in its own right.
Yeah, they're like flirting with some boys. And then this is the excuse to put in the Britney Spears toxic.
Yes!
This is the big toxic moment, Chris. The big toxic scene.
That's what this producer wanted. He based it all around like, how can we organically fit in this song? Oh, yeah. It would have been playing on the radio in 2003.
Yeah.
This is great. So
this whole movie is Britney Spears' fault.
This movie is like, it's about to break me. It's about to break me, folks. This is like one of the other top 3 most ridiculous things I remember in this movie. So they're dancing and like getting attention. One of the diner patrons takes a look at the newspaper. Keep in mind, Cassie said she'd be gone for 3 hours. Maybe there was an hour to get out there from the actual attack, right? So at most, we're maybe 4 hours from this kidnapping. What's on the front page of the newspaper? Local girls kidnapped.
That's right.
That is the fastest print reporting I've seen in my goddamn life.
I completely forget. Yes, you're right.
The timing on that doesn't make any sense. Now would be an okay time for like the Britney Spears song to be interrupted or like a news report on TV. But print is what we're going with? What?
This is the Daily Bugle Extra Edition.
Yeah.
Afternoon
they like
edition.
To print out like every 4 hours they put out a special edition. The Daily Bugle's losing money, folks. They're printing way too many copies.
Dude, I love that the most concerned person that is reading this at the diner is like a grizzled old truck driver.
Yeah.
And he gets up and decides to use the payphone to report that the girls in the paper in the article are at the diner dancing. Like, why would he give a shit? Why would an old truck driver like?
I don't know. I don't know. He's doing the right thing. Maybe
he's the most concerned citizen in New York.
Jim. He's got his own backstory where like he had a daughter that was kidnapped and and so like even though these girls are dancing on the table and having fun and don't seem to be in danger from a kidnapper, he's going to report this crime. Like this is clearly very important. Also, the dining staff, they have no problem with people putting their dirty shoes up on the table and dancing around for as long as they want, you know, that whatever.
Perfectly fine.
Hey, if you fall down and get hurt, don't worry. We've got insurance. Like, have fun. Have fun. This is the 4-star diner. Nobody has a bad time here.
Things were much looser 21 years ago. Way less rules.
Dear God. Cassie has a vision because Ezekiel intercepts the call, gets in his Corvette, drives out to the 4-star diner. Cassie's on the way back to get the girls and has a vision of them getting killed by Ezekiel again.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the first time where she uses those skills to just, instead of like, she envisioned like herself like trying to get the girls to like run away and they all got killed.
Yeah.
So she just drives her car through the diner and hits him.
Yes.
So much for collateral damage. Three elderly ladies do get run over in this scene. It's very depressing.
Right. Property damage. But I mean, it is her only option because her visions show her that they're not going to beat him in hand-to-hand combat. Like they have to strike with a car and then run. Like that's their only options with every time they confront him. It seems to be like hit this asshole with a car and then just run like hell, I guess. I don't know.
I feel like that there are movie level superpowers and TV level superpowers. And TV level superpowers are things like I can turn invisible. I can move a small object with my mind. I can see the future. It's a very passive power to see the future. You can't really like attack somebody with it. None of these people have powers except Ezekiel, which, okay, it puts the hero as like the underdog, but visually, it's not that exciting for a superhero movie.
Not at all. And I mean, that's one of my issues with it is like, again, going back to we want to like the protagonist, but we also want the protagonist of our superhero movie to be badass and exciting.
Yeah.
And what we associate anything dealing with Spidey in his world is swinging from buildings, crawling on walls, being exciting and dynamic, acrobatics, flipping around, fighting 12 guys at once. Like, even though Madam Web is a different character, but we associate that world with excitement and not just a protagonist that has things going on in her head and can drive a car through a building. You know,
that's not the craziest driving a car through something, but we'll get there.
Well, that's true. That's true.
Anyway, drives into Ezekiel, grabs the girls, drives to a motel this time. And while she's there, she finally bonds with them because the girls don't really like Cassie until she decides to teach them CPR. I wonder if that'll be relevant.
Oh, the CPR scene.
And then they finally are like, CPR? All right. You're all right, Cassie Webb. You're all right.
Yeah.
You did just save us for the second time from this guy. Yeah. I guess you're okay.
They're like, you're a pretty good teacher.
This is where I believe the movie did massive sort of reshoots and ADR from this point forward, folks, because all of a sudden Cassie just tells the girls, I need to go to Peru to investigate more about Ezekiel. I don't think originally that was what happened in this movie.
Right.
May I provide my theories?
Let's do it.
I know I've been talking a lot, Jim, but
let's break it down.
I'd love your feedback again. So I believe that Cassie going to Peru and she sort of like learns a little bit more about her powers. She may have done some version of that at some point, but I think that was sort of like ADR. I believe that the original plan for this movie was to have Spider-Man in it. Not as a huge main character, but definitely in the third act. And I saw some reports, they are rumors, but the reports were Sony originally wanted to very much connect this to Spider-Man, and they were going to have Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man be the Spider-Man of their shared universe with like Morbius and Venom and stuff. They would have Spider-Man in there. And then after that was decided and they sort of formed the Madam Web script and started shooting, I think, then they went, no, you know what? Tom Holland, we've got him under contract. We want Tom Holland to be the Spider-Man. So that's now the plan. Sorry, we didn't sign Andrew Garfield, okay? Too late now. And then they go, oh, wait, none of the timeline of this makes sense. Like, we can't have Tom Holland, even like a variant. It just doesn't make sense anymore. Right. So who are we left with for the final battle? Like, it was probably going to be like, a story where Ezekiel was trying to kill spider-related totems to snap the web of life and prevent Spider-Man from killing him in the future. And Cassie would be like sort of helping Spider-Man, like, jump left, duck, now, that kind of stuff. But now they're left with like the characters that they have and they have to make sense of it all. And that's, I think, how like they did all these rewrites and had like Cassie sort of get at the very end, like different powers and had the girls sort of go up against Ezekiel. I don't think the original plan was to have the three random girls go after Ezekiel. I think that they were sort of hostages that like were related to the spider web of life. And if you killed enough of them, you could change fate. And that relates slightly to a storyline called The Grim Hunt. That was a storyline in Amazing Spider-Man where Kraven the Hunter's family were trying to resurrect Kraven from the dead. And to do that, they kidnapped a bunch of spider people, including Araignée, Arachne, and Maddie Franklin Spider-Girl. And Madam Web.
Oh,
it's not
shit.
the exact
Okay.
storyline, but I think that was
Well,
some of the influence.
It's pretty damn close. It's
They kidnap those specific people. They do actually kill Maddie Franklin, and they kill Kane. They don't get a hold of Spider-Man, but they get a hold of his clone Kane, and by killing him,
damn.
that revives Kraven. I think that was some of the impetus. It's not a direct adaptation, but I think that they were taking the ideas from that. I think that was the original goal, was to sort of have that. That's my thought.
You just describing that, though, for me, it's like, great idea. I'm assuming the producers were like, how do we shoot that? We don't have the budget to do that. There's all these characters now. There's all this stuff going on. Can we just keep it with the 4 girls in their street clothes?
Yeah.
At a Pepsi factory at the end of the movie.
I think that they were still going to have that big fight there, to be honest, at the end.
Okay.
But it just would have been more just Spider-Man against them, and Cassie would have kept the girls safe somewhere.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's my thinking. That she saw the future, and so she protected these girls from getting killed. Anyway, that's just my thought. I don't know it for a fact. I don't know if anyone will ever know it for a fact, but I think Sony's original plan was to have Spider-Man in this movie. And if you look it up,
Chris,
there's lots of rumors.
We can start the new movement of hashtag release the Kane cut, or release the Andrew Garfield cut. Release. Coming in 2026, the 4-hour version of Madam Web with Andrew Garfield. It's like,
I feel like that could have worked better anyway.
Massive 4-hour movie of like,
oh my god,
why was this made?
God, double this length. Yeah. Oh, that kill me. So at this point, Cassie's like, I need to go down to Peru. She drops the kids off with Ben Parker to babysit them while she decides to go to Peru. Now, 2003, 2 years after 9/11, you're going to go to Peru while wanted for kidnapping, while the supervillain has technology that looks at every camera. And guess what happens? She goes, I need to go to Peru. Cut to Peru. She's there.
Yes.
She made it. No problem. Barely an inconvenience.
You have to go to Peru.
I'll be back as soon as I can. Thank you, Ben. You didn't ask for any of this.
Yeah, we don't have
this
time.
movie. That's why I think that's a reshoot. That makes no sense with everything else they set up. That specific, that's a huge logic gap that, if you're not paying attention and you're just going with the movie, fine, whatever. Cassie went to Peru. But we've established that Ezekiel has cameras everywhere, and he's now looking for her too. And she was able to, there's news reports out there, and she could get out of the country to Peru, no problem.
Yeah.
That's weird.
She's a very lucky girl. But dude, if
she's
you're
a very lucky girl.
If you're a bad guy and you're trying to capture people, the first thing that people would try and do is flee the city. Go to the bus station, go to the train station, go to the airport. So you would assume Ezekiel and his Alfred girl, they would be paying more attention to the cameras at the airport, JFK, LaGuardia. And it's like, well, but she was able to just get on the plane. It's fine. On an international flight, it all worked out.
An international flight. Exactly. That is just so crazy to me. And then this is why I think it's all reshoots. All the Peru stuff is just so weird. She looks at a photo her mom took of the woods and is able to track down that exact location.
Yeah.
and then bumps into the spider people who were like, we knew you'd be back someday. And how about a vision of the past to see how much your mom actually cared about you?
Yes. She gets
What does
to
she learn
hug
about Ezekiel?
Mama Webb. She gets to hug her in her dream, in her vision.
Yeah. She literally has a line that says, I always thought my mother didn't care about me.
I always thought my mom didn't care about me.
That's a pretty terrible way to live your whole life until now.
Yeah. She realized her mom wasn't a dick. And then Cassidy becomes nicer, maybe? Or I don't know.
Oh my God. I'm dying here. This is hilarious. Did you catch the line that the spider people give her to motivate her?
The responsibility line?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's play that, Jamie.
And when you take on the responsibility, great power will come.
They said it like backwards.
They flip it. When you
But
take
Chris,
on responsibility,
my nerdy knowledge of, I was like, oh, that's the Uncle Ben line, but just told in reverse. Or,
yeah. Are we supposed to think that Cassie was like, that is a great line, and like just told it to Ben later, and then Ben was like, I can touch this line up a little bit more?
Yes.
But it like, we had to know where that line came from. It couldn't have just been Ben being like a wise man. Whatever. I don't know what she learned about Ezekiel really by going all the way to Peru. She learned that her mom liked her, but she goes there, and then the spider people are like, if you take on responsibility, you're going to get great power. And she's like, great. All right, maybe I've got great power.
Yeah, it's funny because I just watched this last night and it's already leaving my brain.
Oh, yeah.
Did they offer her specific training advice as far as the powers go, or no?
No advice. Nothing like about Ezekiel and like what he wants or anything. Like nothing. Like she went to learn about like Ezekiel. Instead, she gets a little bit of a backstory about like, oh, your mom actually was taking this risky trip because you had a genetic disease, and she was trying to cure that, and she did by getting bit by that spider. She's like, but I don't have a disease. And the spider people are like, yeah, because we let our special spider bite your mom.
Yeah. The venom went into the uterus and saved little baby Madam Webb or whatever.
That's science. That's science. Spider peptides cure genetic diseases. Everybody knows that. Everybody knows that much.
This movie is a gem, you guys. It's
just,
I wouldn't even know how to describe this because it's its own thing. It's its own anomaly. Because we watch all these different levels of bad, good movies, and this is like its own abstract thing.
There's different ways a movie can be bad.
The only way I would ever rewatch this is if I was with a bunch of friends and we were able to like hoot and holler and drink and
make
smoke things while we watched it, because watching it alone, it was sort of like, is this real? Is this what? But that's also due to the fact that this was Frankenstein together from all these different things.
I think
and
so.
ADR and
Ezekiel gets it the worst. Like, almost every scene in the movie is. There are literal scenes, if you pay attention, where there's dialogue coming out of his mouth and his lips are not even moving.
Yes.
But if it goes fast enough,
but your brain knows, your brain sees it.
You're catching something is weird, and eventually you're like, wait, is this what's happening? Oh, that's definitely what's happening. Yeah, there's lots of ADR. Back in New York, Mary Parker, her water broke. She's about to give birth. So even though they're all trying to hide, off the grid, well, now they've got to get to the hospital. So, now that I think of it, the girls could have stayed at home, but whatever. They all get in the car. Mary, Ben, the three girls. I think one of the girls calls shotgun, which means that like the pregnant lady is forced to sit in the back seat between two girls.
No, you're right. That's what. Yeah.
That's kind of rude. I just realized that's a little rude. I don't know. Maybe
Totally.
it's the safest place for her. I don't know. But Ezekiel somehow, like, has a camera.
Oh, I know why they did that for filmmaking purposes, Chris. Because the girl sitting in the front seat riding shotgun, she blatantly looks out her side passenger window, and one of the cameras catches her, and Ezekiel is alerted to them. If it would have been May in the front seat, wouldn't have mattered. Wouldn't have showed up on the camera. Mary, I'm sorry. Mary, all the names. So, do you know what I mean? They actually did that for a reason, to have, what's the black girl's name?
Maddie Franklin.
Matt. So that was the reason why she was in the front seat.
That's probably right. You're probably right. Yeah, that's the only reason. And they just shove this poor pregnant woman between two teenage girls. Fortunately, Cassie is like almost there. She gets there just as they've left, and she's ready to again. Like, she's still got that stolen taxi cab, I believe.
Yeah.
But an ambulance had been called. They decided they couldn't wait for it, but the ambulance is there, and she's like, you know what car I could steal that I'm better at driving? Ambulance.
Here we go.
I'm good at that.
The Madam Web mobile, we call it.
Yes. So Ezekiel has his Oracle girl turn off lights, and there's almost a car accident that traps the car in the middle of a four-way busy intersection, and Ezekiel's got grenades and stuff now. He's about to get the girls, and Cassie Webb drives this ambulance through the second or third floor parking garage, through a billboard, aims it perfectly. It'd be so hilarious if she miscalculated and it just landed on the car and crushed all her friends or something.
Dude, her doing this is like a Dukes of Hazzard moment. It's like, wow, we're driving it through a billboard. I so wanted that Dukes of Hazzard horn. Yeah.
Oh my God. She should have at least had it go bloop bloop.
Oh my God.
That would have been funny if all the sound dropped out as Ezekiel looks up and knows he's about to get hit, and then but you just hear the little siren thing just go bloop bloop, and then boom, it hits him, and there's all this chaos.
Yes.
But yeah, so she drives a vehicle into Ezekiel for the second time. Look, it is a superhero movie, so I'm willing to go with the craziness, but to calculate that, she's like, I'm going to probably have to be at 56 miles per hour to break through this billboard, and hopefully I don't kill all my friends and those girls. I'll just drive right over their car.
The countless innocent citizens on the streets of Manhattan.
That is one risky move.
That is one taking
but you know
place
what?
in
Then
New
again,
York.
I guess we could argue that's her seeing the future, so she's sort of
right.
But none of that's explained. Well,
that's I mean, if you were lazy, you could say, well, that's her version of her Spidey sense, and it's guiding her to know when to crash through and do these things.
I saw a future where I was driving at 52 miles an hour, and it didn't work. So in this, I'm going to drive 54 miles an hour. I don't know.
Exactly, Chris. That's 2 miles make a big difference. That speed difference.
It'd be funny to see her just calculating it, though. Instead of psychic, you just saw overlaid all these mathematical equations for physics.
Wow.
She's going, yeah.
That actually, I mean, for this movie, it's why not? Why not put even more weird shit? This movie's already super weird and bizarre and awkward. Why not? And that, when we get to the conclusion, that's why I want to throw my conclusion theory at you too, because it's a very why not situation. This is already preposterous. Let's just amp it up.
Here's where it gets super preposterous. So she grabs the girls and they make a run for it, and she's like, my psychic visions are telling me here's where we should go. We should go to the fireworks factory. Remember that fireworks factory that had burned down? Guess what? It's still full of fireworks. It was on fire. It was supposed to be condemned or something. it is still full of fireworks. And it isn't
Yes.
just a fireworks factory, people. We can now see that there is a massive Pepsi Cola sign on top of it. This is the Pepsi fireworks factory. Look at that, Jim.
Sponsor, our glorious sponsor for this episode.
Oh my dear God. So, and I'm trying to like sort of like cut this short, but you know, they light the fireworks off and she's like, you know, now Cassie's way more confident in her powers. She's like, girls, duck. And, you know, like they're safe, but the fireworks are getting close to Ezekiel. One funny thing though, they call for a helicopter rescue. Okay.
Yeah.
They all get to the top of the Pepsi fireworks factory, and Ezekiel is attacking and stuff. And I forget exactly how it happens, but they do get the rescue helicopter blown up. So like Madam Web like may have been helping these 3 girls, but she definitely got those 2 people killed. There's no question in my mind that she called them into danger and got them killed.
Yeah, innocent lives were taken in this scene. Yeah,
but they didn't have any lines, so that is okay. That's legally
They're
okay.
like, it's an abstract idea that there's humans in this helicopter.
Right.
It's a kind of an abstract thing.
And so like this is where I think that they would have had a Spider-Man versus Ezekiel or Kane fight. All 3 girls end up like, you know, the building's sort of collapsing, getting blown up and stuff. All 3 girls sort of attack, but also all end up dangling from a steel girder. They're all in the exact same danger. And then Cassie gets a brand new superpower, which is like great timing. If you're at the very end of a movie and you can get a new superpower, like aces, great. All of a sudden, Cassie can just sort of psychically create 3 duplicates of herself that all lift the girls out of danger. What?
Yeah. Spirit spiders, Chris, is what
power is that?
It's a common theory. Everyone knows this. Spirit spiders, Chris.
Spirit spiders.
I'm making this up right now, guys, but
her powers in the comics are just she can see the future. She sort of sees that here. But also, I almost forgot, like, the reason she decided to go to Peru was at the motel, she had, like, a psychic connection with Ezekiel that night. And she's like, oh, like, you're the bad guy. I need to learn more about you. I was like, where these psychic powers come from? That's another new power.
Oh, yeah.
Anyway, she saves the 3 girls and maneuvers Ezekiel into just the right place that he gets crushed by the letter S in the Pepsi sign. But of course,
amazing.
She gets injured too. Cassie
it's amazing. Oh, right. Yes. A firework directly to the face.
Underwater, though.
Underwater.
Still blind.
Blinds her, which, you know, the character in the comic is blind, obviously. So
that's the origin.
Because we need to have that hero moment at the end for her where she's in those like awkward goggles. It's so odd. And and it's like she's now literally Oracle, like Batgirl.
Well, she's Madam Web. Like at the end, she's also paralyzed. She's also like gets hit by something. But we cut to the near future, and you know she's blind and in a wheelchair, but she's now going to be the mentor for these 3 girls who also don't have their powers yet, but I guess someday will. What I love about this, she's now in complete control of her psychic abilities. She can see the future. I think she's moved into like a nicer apartment because now she's got money. But sure didn't help. Sure didn't help with that money with the Ben Parker. Remember, the Parkers are chronically poor. Definitely didn't warn them about how like Mary and Ben would be killed, and Peter would have to go live with. So like that was her friend too, Ben. She's not gonna like warn him or anything with her psychic powers.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that. If she know,
The implications of this lady having like great psychic powers, but like that Spider-Man will also one day exist, mean that like at some point she was just like, well, we had a good run, Ben. Sorry you're gonna be like poor and get killed by a criminal and and your nephew's gonna have to like grow up without you.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna stop any of that. That's the implication at this point.
That's a major loophole in this universe's mythology.
She didn't have to be friends with Ben Parker. She could have just like been helping these 3 girls.
Yeah, that's funny, dude, because that's just fan service that they added that
Right.
wound up, it bites them in the ass if you think about it logically, like what you're doing right now.
I made the mistake, Jim, of thinking this movie through logically. How does Cassie get to Peru? What happens? Why does she not use her psychic powers, to help Ben Parker? I don't know.
Yeah. Well, dude, my illogical thing that I wanted to run past you and our wonderful viewers is I got excited at the end of the movie because the end of the movie basically turns to pure schlock, right? It's like, oh, I'm excited again. Like this is pure schlock. They're fighting on the roof of this fireworks Pepsi factory. And for me, man, it's like, you guys, again, you didn't push it far enough. If you're going this schlocky, just give us what we want. Just show the 3 girls manifest their powers in their costumes. You have not explained anything. You could be as schlocky as Madam Web suddenly has her satchel from her mom's trunk or whatever and pulls out a magic crystal or something and is like, you guys, alakazam, presto, a puff of smoke, the smoke clears, the girls are all standing there in their badass costumes. We get a hero shot. They're awesome. They kick Ezekiel's ass together as a team. Why not just give us what we want? Like them in their costumes doing their thing in real time, not in a vision or not in a dream, and end it on that. And because it's like nothing matters anyway. Just go pure schlock.
So
pure
weird.
schlock. So, but they still root it in. We know these girls are going to be these heroes. We're not going to explain how, but through Cassie's visions, we see them in their outfits.
Yeah. Technically, these girls are never actually acting as superheroes. We saw Ezekiel's nightmare and Cassie's vision of them in the future as superheroes. She has a quick like 5-second dream of them like all being superheroes, Right. Yeah, I think we keep suggesting things. Go schlock, go funny, go horror, go something. Just go something. But it's amazing. They must have like put this through so fast.
Mm-hmm.
I don't understand the logic, but that's basically my problem with a bunch of the Sony Spider-Man universe projects is that they don't feel complete. They feel rushed. They all feel rushed.
Right.
And some of them come out and you're like, well, some of that was fun. The only ones that seem to be given the time to be developed properly are the animated films. So maybe just do animated films. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And you've got, the animated movies worked so great because they got Lord and Miller have enough clout to really, I think, put their stamp on the things that they do. And, but man, for them to make this a 2-hour movie is laughable. It's like,
it's a lot.
Does this include bonus footage? It's like, no, the movie's basically 2 hours. And
then you can have a director's cut and the cut scenes and the behind the scenes documentary, and you can take it all
Hollywood
home.
When you release the Kane cut, to come to me and Chris for additional ideas and schlock recommendations. Like we can really,
set it in the modern day. Set it in the modern day. Have a variant Spider-Man. Have the villain be Kane. And just say Web of Life stuff that it could have been a lot more clear. It's tricky to make, I think, a movie about a character that has psychic visions, but you're not saying that's the only special person in the world. She lives within a world of people that have all sorts of different superpowers. You know what I mean?
Right.
If you made a movie where one person could see little glimpses of the future, that's amazing. The implications there of how you could change your life. But if you put it in a world where people have super strength and can jump, a city block and things like that, it becomes way less visually exciting.
Yes.
It's something where you can honestly do it so much better as a comic book, because then you can get into the character's head, or you could like have them have weird esoteric dreams and like do something visually that's really cool and funky. And it's hard to push that in a movie.
Yeah. It's also like, I wonder how much committee was involved with interrupting the natural flow of what this movie was supposed to be. And because like I said, I've said it a lot, but all my behind the scenes research, it seemed like everyone had a different idea of what this movie was, including the different producers. Because one of the producers was like, I think it's awesome that we're making a movie about a strong female character whose powers exist in her mind. And it's like, well, wait a minute, just think about what you just said right there. That's fine to have a strong female character with mind powers, but are you making a psychic type hero movie? Are you making a superhero movie? Because I said it before, but like a superhero movie, which is what you guys are advertising, we're expecting action and dynamics and something rooted in the Spider-Man mythology, and we're not getting that. So I feel like your vision is getting lost somewhere of what you're trying to make. I don't know.
The idea that you would do a Madam Web movie before you do Black Cat or Silver Sable to talk about like, you know, female heroes in the Spider-Man world is so stunning. I mean, because as a starting point, you're talking about an elderly lady who's blind and in a wheelchair. And then they're like, well, how do we sex that up? And you're like, what do you mean? Yes. What do you mean?
Yeah. That's a total producer move, by the way, man, is being like, can we take this old lady character and like make it a hip, sexy Madam Web? Like that's such a like Hollywood twist on something that already exists.
To God, you know what we're going to get next is an Aunt May movie where she's just like this super hot, sexy lady. Because I mean, like we went from like Rosemary Harris in the Maguire movies to what's her name that played like Gidget and stuff in the 60s.
Sally Field.
Sally Field.
Yeah, the wonderful
younger,
Sally Field.
prettier.
Yeah.
Then we get Marissa Tomei, you know, a little older than us, but still like drop dead gorgeous at this point.
Very attractive.
Like we're gonna, like Sydney Sweeney's gonna be like Aunt May. That's gonna be the movie, like Aunt May, and it's just like a super sexy young girl.
It's so funny because us being old school like Spider-Man fans and stuff, seeing Marissa Tomei as Aunt May to me was almost like, am I supposed to be feeling these feelings toward Aunt May? Like she's hot now, like she like
just okay, but then they leaned into it and they're like, yeah, everybody thinks she's hot. Like, okay,
yeah.
Sorry, comic books, you're not going to be able to youthen her that much. Like, if you can't, because they've tried to like draw Aunt May like a little bit like younger and more healthy these days, compared to like how Ditko and Ramita drew her as like a fucking zombie.
Yes. The original Aunt May, drawn by Steve Ditko, looks almost like a skeleton just wrapped with
the most terrifying, frail, thin, like inconceivably ancient, like mummy of a woman.
Yeah. And in the Spider-Verse animated movies, she looks cool. She's still older, but she looks like in shape older woman. You know, not a frail elderly.
Probably just
she's
like
proactive.
Late 50s or early 60s, but like, you know, not old as dust.
Yeah.
That was just, The original comics had her really old. And at a certain point, like more like around the JMS, J. Michael Straczynski, John Romita Jr. era, they were like, you know, Aunt May should be a little more youthful than this. Let's change her hairstyle at the very least.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she discovers Peter's costume and that
that's right.
page image. He's all like beat up and everything.
Yeah.
They did some cool shit with that run.
Yeah.
Like, there's been all these different runs throughout the years.
A lot of supernatural stuff in that run. That was like, you know, like just, Moreland and hanging out with Doctor Strange, like supernatural, which isn't generally what Spider-Man leans into, but you know, it was different.
Right.
The art was great. That was, I agree. Like that's some of my favorite John Romita Jr. art.
Oh man, he was firing on all cylinders, dude. He was so.
How cool would it have been if they had the budget to like set the whole final act at night instead, like with like pouring rain, the way like John Romita Jr. draws it or something, and like have the fireworks like, you know, sort of echoing off the raindrops and stuff in the sky. That would have looked so much cooler. Cost more money though.
Yeah. You're talking MCU effects now, Chris.
I'm talking MCU level movie, not Sony level movie. 100 years of Columbia Pictures.
Chris, you go into the pitch meeting and you're like, can we have rain in the final scene? And the Sony people are like, whoa, 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 slow your roll, young man. Rain? What are you talking about, Mr. Fancy Pants?
Okay, Elon, if we had that kind of money, yeah, we'd end all the movies with rain. Well, and you're like, it doesn't have to be digital rain. We could literally just turn on a rain machine. They're like, not digital?
Right.
Thanks for watching this bizarre movie. We'll never know what it was originally intended to be, but I'm positive the original intent was not the final result.
Yeah. Well, I had more fun talking to you about the movie.
Good.
But the movie wasn't unpleasant to watch. It is its own unique thing. Like, I don't know what else to say about it. It's its own very bizarre, misguided product.
Yeah.
Basically.
Yeah. It's got some strange gaps in logic and some very underdeveloped characters. I don't think we ever really learn what Ezekiel wants in life other than like, he was poor and he doesn't want to die, but those are very weak motivations. Those are like, he doesn't want something in life. And we kept saying throughout our discussion, the three girls, you know what I mean? Like they get so little characterization.
Right.
So little.
Yeah.
You learn a little of their history, but you don't learn a lot about who they are as people.
Yeah.
Well.
Teen girls.
Madam Web 2, we've given you some ideas for how to improve.
We can't wait for part 2. We're ready.
All right. Well, this will come out in December. Maybe we'll have enough time to do some sort of Christmas schlock. Maybe.
I would love that.
That would be fun. There's a lot of Christmas schlock out there.
There is.
Christmas horror, Christmas like bad romance type stuff. There's like just low budget attempts at a kids movie that like is misguided with like, aliens and all sorts of crazy ideas for Christmas.
Yeah.
Or just movies set at Christmas, like that, like Gremlins and Lethal Weapon and stuff like that. Anything by Shane Black.
Yeah, yeah.
So it's
funny because we already reviewed Night of the Comet, and that's set during Christmas, even though it's LA. But there's Christmas trees and decorations, so it's technically a Christmas movie. But there's some schlock that we can cover that.
We'll have to talk and see if we can decide on something. That would be fun.
For sure, man.
That would be fun.
Awesome.
Jim.
Cool, buddy.
Always have a good time. What do you want to plug?
I'm going to plug just myself. If you guys want to go to my website, jimmafood.com, I have prints, books, enamel pins available for purchase. I also have released new Savage Street Vigilante merch on my TeePublic page, which Jamie can show some images right now. If you want a t-shirt, we got coffee mugs. And on the same page, we have the Trash Movie Bonanza gear as well. So,
hell yeah.
Check it out. And Chris, what do you got for us?
Aside from, I'd love it if you gave this episode a like, a comment, hit subscribe. That stuff all really helps us. And I also have my second channel, Comic Tropes. And you may have noticed I've rebranded this. Pros and Cons, I thought was a clever name, but synergy-wise, I think it just makes more sense to call this Comic Tropes After Dark. So this channel is now Comic Tropes After Dark.
Yeah, I like the name change. I think it's
Thank you. I interviewed one of your friends recently, Jeff Johns, and Brian Hitch, who I'm a huge fan of. YouTube's algorithm does not like long-form interviews. I think that comic book fans like them, so I would love it if you took a look at that on Comic Tropes. I think that there's a lot to be learned about comic books and the craft and the cool book Redcoat. I hope you'll consider checking that out.
Yes, and I had that playing the other day, and both those guys came off as really great. You did a great job with the interview, and they're both passionate dudes about the art form of comics, which I always love and respect. So
very cool.
But yeah, man, I don't like that algorithm stuff of.
And also, I will send this to you, but a viewer.
That's right.
Sent us each a copy of a Blu-ray. They sent them to the Comic Tropes PO box. It's called Beats of Rage. I don't know much about it, but I will be sending this your way, Jim. So, like, thank you to the viewer. Hold on, I can figure out his name. Nicholas.
Yeah, that was during your
Nicholas
mailbox episode.
Yeah. I was
Nicholas,
doing
thank you.
An indie showcase, unboxing stuff sent into the PO box, and Nicholas is a viewer that sent us each a copy of this. He thinks that we should watch it, but hey, we'll never ask for free stuff. But very kind of you to have sent that. We'll give it a watch.
Yes, awesome, guys.
Keep it trashy,
and remember the delicious flavoring.
Trash Movie Bonanza. Like and subscribe. Thank you.